Now let's bring in Amnesty International. They voiced their concern about what is happening around the Jagersfontein dam collapse. They are calling for accountability. I'm joined by the organization's executive director in South Africa, Shenilla Mohamed. Shenilla, thank you so much for your time. You listened to what Karen had to say. I mean, it's extremely concerning. Talk to me about what you'd like to see as an organization happening now.
You know, Kathy, just listening to Karen was just honestly making my hair stand on end because, you know, I mean, the poor people who are in the middle of this absolute crisis, because, you know, often we forget while we're talking to government and mining companies that actually it is the people, the mining affected communities that actually bear the brunt of the lack of accountability, of really the carelessness on the part of mining companies and the state for allowing this to happen. You know, this was a totally preventable disaster. It could have been prevented, but it was not. And now we're sitting with the crisis, and you know, people are pointing fingers at each other. And I think, you know, ultimately, Sally, the buck ends with the state. How a mining company or any corporate operates in this country has to be regularized by the state. And I think the state is failing dismally. This is not the first time that we have seen people being drastically affected by the behavior of a corporate or a mining company. The contamination of water, we're seeing it all over the country. We are seeing horrendous things happening to people on the ground, and yet our government is quite happy to sit back and say, well, you know, it's happening, it is the responsibility of the companies, etc. No, it is the responsibility of the state. We don't care whether it's the Minister of Labour or the Minister of Mines. The state is responsible for the loss of life, for the disaster that is happening in this area and in all the other areas where where mines are allowed to operate with impunity.
I mean, you make an interesting and important point. First of all, that there are multiple government departments who have a role to play here. And while the law is clear, as Karen Bosman explained, that ultimately it's the company that will have to bear responsibility if they are found to have been pollutant, which it certainly seems they have at this stage. It's, you know, in an ideal world, that means there's a coordinated monitoring situation. In a less than ideal world, it means it's very easy for the buck to be passed. And let's face it, South Africa is built on mining. We have a lot of these tailing dams from various different types of mining. What do you think government needs to be doing more than they are at the moment? Do you think it's just too reactive in general?
I think, you know, Sally, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, South Africa's mining industry or history of mining has been literally built on inequality and exploitation. And I think, you know, what we're seeing at the moment is the state being reactive. So whenever an incident or a tragedy or something happens, they step up and they say, okay, you know, we're going to see what we can do here. But actually, there's a lot of preventive measures that they could be taking that they're not taking. And I think, you know, if in 2020, as Karen said, this was already identified as a problem. This incident should have never happened. And we're seeing this across the board. So really what we're seeing is the state actually abdicating its responsibility to hold mines to account. Yes, ultimately, the burden remains on the mining companies to deal with whatever damages that there are. But the right to life, the protection of citizens, all of that is the responsibility of the state. And the state has to make sure that there is nothing, no corporate, no mining company that is coming in and putting that at risk. So they really should be coming down much harder on companies that are violating the laws, really monitoring, ensuring. I mean, you know, the ministry that was looking at this before should have actually checked up on it if they saw that there was a danger there. And you know, probably this didn't happen. And I really think, you know, Karen said, you know, that it would become difficult, you know, for accountability. But I really do think mines that are not compliant, mines that are not sticking to their SLPs, and I know this is not a mine, you know, it's the remnants of a mine, but, you know, whatever is existing within the law should be applied and should be applied in a very, very harsh way, because people need justice. So if it means going to the MPA, if it means taking action, if it means criminal action, it has to be done, Kathy. We have to stop allowing our allow people to die and to be devastated, in such a way. Somebody has to be held to account.
We've certainly seen the President yesterday, Minister Gwede Mantashe today, and they're talking about a coordinated response. Are you satisfied with the level of humanitarian assistance that has been rendered to this community so far?
Well, I think a lot more can be done. I mean, I think, I saw a news report earlier that said that the company that owns this, particular area has said they've put aside 20 million to deal with this. But, what we want to see is, as Karen rightly said, people taken out of the danger zone. The water has been contaminated. The sewerage is seeping into it. This means that there'll be disease, there'll be, cholera, all sorts of things can happen. There are children there. We really need to see people being lifted from those horrible spaces and really being given the humanitarian assistance that they need. But also we need the president, we keep on hearing about these coordinated approaches. We heard about it when it came to gender-based violence. There's going to be a coordinated approach. We need to see the results of these coordinated approaches. So they need to tell us exactly, who's going to be responsible for what is the coordinated approach, how long is it going to take, what is going to happen in the meantime to these people. We can't just have rhetoric. These are people whose lives have been damaged by carelessness and by a lack of accountability. And I think we have the right to demand these answers from our state.
Thank you so much for speaking to us this evening. Executive Director of Amnesty International here in South Africa, Shenilla Mohamed. Now, still to